Imagine a world not so different from our own. A world of global trade, diplomatic treaties, and international logistics routes. A world where distinct cultures depend on each other to survive. They had complex economies. They had massive armies. They had pages of history stretching back thousands of years behind them. They believed their civilization would last forever. And then, within a time as short as a single human lifespan, it all vanished. The year was 1177 BC. The Late Bronze Age. This was not just the fall of a single kingdom. This was the total, systemic collapse of everything. The Greeks, the Hittites, the Canaanites. All of them were razed to the ground. Writing stopped. Art vanished. Major cities were abandoned and never inhabited again. Humanity was dragged into a dark age that would last for centuries. Welcome to the Cognito Archive. Today, we are opening a file on the first true apocalypse recorded in history. How did the most advanced civilizations on Earth vanish so quickly? Who were those mysterious sea peoples held responsible for the destruction? And the most terrifying question of all, could this happen to us too? To understand the fall, you must first understand the height. The Late Bronze Age was an age of globalization. Egyptian kings addressed Hittite kings as "my brother" in the letters they wrote to them. They exchanged gifts. Gold came from the south, tin from the north, copper from the islands. This was a tightly woven web. No civilization could manage to survive entirely on its own. To produce bronze, the technology that made the world turn, you needed copper and tin. However, these resources were almost never found in the same place. Therefore, they created a massive and complex supply chain. It was efficient. It was profitable. But as we also know from our own modern world, a system that is highly efficient is also surprisingly prone to breaking. If you pull just a single thread, the entire web doesn't just shake. It snaps. The collapse did not come silently. In fact, we have the black box recordings of the crash in hand. Clay tablets found in the rubble of the city of Ugarit. These were the final messages desperately sent by a dying world. My father, behold. The enemy's ships came here, my cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. The king of Ugarit wrote this to the king of Cyprus to ask for help. But the help never came. Because Cyprus was already engulfed in flames. Another tablet had this penned on it: the 7 ships of the enemy that came here caused us much damage. And then, silence. The tablets were found inside a kiln, an oven used for baking clay. They had been written, placed in the oven to harden, but were never taken out. The city had been razed to the ground before the message could be sent. Who were these enemies? History calls them the Sea Peoples. A mysterious confederation consisting of naval raiders. They came into existence out of nowhere, crossed the Mediterranean from end to end like a swarm of locusts, and set fire to everything in their path. For decades, historians thought they were the sole cause. A simple story: bad guys came, slaughtered everyone, end of story. But the evidence points to something far darker. The Sea Peoples were not just conquerors. They were refugees. New studies conducted on ancient pollen and sediments show that around 1200 BC, the region was struck by a megadrought that lasted for decades. Crops withered. Famine spread everywhere. During the same period, a series of major earthquakes razed major cities to the ground. Hungry, desperate, and left homeless, people took to the seas. They were not an army of invasion, it was a migration of desperation. This is where the system's collapse comes into play. When trade routes were disrupted by pirates and refugees, the flow of copper was cut off. The flow of tin stopped. The economy crashed. Kings lost their power. Peasants revolted. The intricate web of the Bronze Age turned into a trap. It wasn't a single thing that killed them. It was everything happening at once. A perfect storm. So, why is this important today? Because we live in a world even more interconnected than theirs. We rely on chips coming from Taiwan, grain from Ukraine, energy from the Middle East. We have built a system of unimaginable efficiency. Just-in-time delivery. Global internet. It never even occurred to the people of 1177 BC that their worlds could end. They thought their walls were too high, their armies too strong, their gods too powerful. Until those ships appeared on the horizon. The Bronze Age collapse teaches us that progress is not a straight line. Civilizations do not always go forward. Sometimes they fall back. And sometimes, they vanish entirely. The question is not, could it again? The question is, would we be able to see it coming? If you want to explore more lost chapters of history, subscribe to the archive. And tell me in the comments, do you think our modern society is more resilient than the Bronze Age? Or are we just as fragile as they were? See you in the next file.